Good morning, Renee. This is your brother, Don. Today is July 21st. It's going to be over 100 degrees today. I wanted to give you a recap on life and also ask you why you're so angry. Let me give you the ugly recap first. October 1st, Mom had a heart attack at 4:10 a.m. I also had a heart attack at 4:10 a.m. on October 1st. I strongly believe that I felt Mom passed away. How could you guys be so cruel and indifferent to her? Sandra literally had Mom isolated in the home for almost 6 years. Not one holiday celebrated, not one birthday celebrated. She purposely isolated me from Mom. Why, I don't know. But think how cruel it was to Mom. A few times before the last time I saw her, because I'd call her every day, I have cell phone logs to prove it. She came up and gave me a hug before I left, and she whispered at me, she said, "Donnie, I need to see more of you, okay, honey?" I said, "Me too, Mom." I was the one that stayed around when Dad passed away. I wasn't going anywhere. Neither you or Sandra were going to come home and be with Mom. Here's something you really need to remember though and know. Mom experienced 2 heart attacks with Dad. The first one in Lake Havasu. She was able to give him CPR and first aid while the paramedics got there. After 10 days, they flew him home in an air ambulance. The second time Mom was asleep with Dad when he had his second heart attack, and he died. And he died. Think of the grief and the emptiness that stayed with Mom forever about how her husband died and she couldn't do anything. It changed her. She's my mom, so when she'd have a moment, it was just a moment, nothing more. We went to the Getty, Ronald Reagan road trips together, the Munchbox Fridays, road trips to Uncle Mel. Mom had a great lesson for me, and then I'll tell you a lesson about Dad that maybe it'll hit home with. Mom, when I was 9, going to be 9, we were at Chatsworth Elementary School, so I'm riding my brand new bike that Dad got for us for Christmas. Mom followed me to school to make sure I was okay and I wasn't screwing around as 9-year-old boys might do. As she dropped me off, she said, "Donnie, have fun today in school, honey. I love you." And I turned around and I saw Mom waving at me, and I said, "I love you too, Mom." The next day, when I'm anxious to get going and riding my bike to school, I'm wondering where Mom is, and I hear this voice holler out, "Have fun today in school, Donnie. I love you." And I turn around, and there's Mom waving goodbye to me to have fun today in school, and also wiping a tear from her eye. Anyone I love or care about, the last thing I've always said is, "I love you," because you never know if it's the last thing that you do. That was the last thing that Mom and I said the day before she passed away. I sat there and I told her, I said, "Mom, it's okay, it's time." And I started crying. Because it was, but it wasn't for me. The selfish side of me was crying. So I said, Mom, I'll see you later. And as I backed up and walked out, I stopped myself. I said, whoa, no, you have to tell Mom you love her. So I walked back in, and I leaned over and said, I love you, Mom, and kissed her on the forehead. And she looked up at me with such clarity and said, I love you too, Donnie. It's now your turn. Find a good woman. Think of that. Because I cut back on my work so significantly because I wanted to spend time with Mom. Whatever it was on her house that was needed, I took care of it. 4 cars, insurance, maintenance. I got the gift. Sandra used deceit and thievery. Everything I tell you is documented, not by me, but by the rehabilitation centers and the hospitals. Mom lacked the capacity. Within a week and a half of Mom being admitted to West Valley Rehab, Sandra went and had a secret trust made up, naming her executor and power of attorney over everything in Mom's life. Mom had the onset of dementia. She lacked the capacity to realize what he was doing, and Sandy just used trust and said, just sign this, Mom, I'll take care of it. She changed the locks on the house. She stopped me from finishing the kitchen, though I have all the flooring, the ranch stainless steel hoods, everything. She changed the locks and denied me access to Mom. Mom slept on a couch for 6 years. She had no interaction with others except maybe on a Sunday to go to church. Sandra, as a minimum, used negligence, whether unintentional or unintentional. It was negligence for Mom falling. There was only one door Mom could get out of the house, anyone for that matter, because Sandra changed all the locks. And that was the back door, and it had a single bolt key on it. So Sandra had to turn the key. So Sandra had access to the door when she was taking Mom out. Mom fell and fractured her forearm and her wrist. I didn't know that. I called multiple times that day. She finally answered around 7:30 at night, and said, exasperated and breathless. And I said, what's the matter, Mom? She says, oh, I fell. I said, I'm on my way. I'm taking you to the hospital. And in the background, I hear Sandra holler out, she's fine. Sandra waited 2 days to take Mom to the hospital. Infection had set in. She's dead while breathing. Sandra called me on a Friday night a little bit before 11 and said, Donnie, we gotta quit fighting. That's when I lost my temper, because I don't lose my temper. You really have to push the limits and cross the red line and cross it again, and she did. And I screamed at her and said, I'm not fighting with you, and I'm not. You know why? The last thing I wanted Mom to know was her kids were fighting over her stuff. Her home was to go to Emerson and Cy with me as the trustee. The condo that I paid off a long, long time ago was to go to my other 3 grandchildren. Amalia, who's named after Grandma, Wyatt, and Sadie. I'm telling you this because after I had my heart attack, I about didn't make it. I was on both physical and psychological care. It's not that I was suicidal or but I was lonely. I was empty over such hideous hate that could kill my mom. The doctors told me, because I told them, I said, I can't let my sister do this. And they said, why? Now, Renee, here's the lesson from Dad that I hope you remember. You can disagree, but you never fight with family, because when you fight with a family member, you're looking for a winner. Why would you want to have a winner in your family? That was Dad. Even when you pushed him to the ground and drove off in the car, Renee, he wasn't angry, he was hurt. Dad rarely lost his temper. We all have limits. But Dad was an excellent man. He was a great dad. And you didn't even come home for his funeral. When Mom died, I get a message from this scum who's called a pastor at Chatsworth West Valley Church saying, Donnie, we will let you know when there is a memorial for your mom. No one told me Mom died except for hospice, because I gave roses and flowers to people whenever I came in, and made Mom fresh vanilla malts and tapioca puddings and double mashed potatoes, you name it, something to give her food that she liked. His note, and I have it, I saved the text, I printed the text, said, we will let you know about your mom's funeral and or memorial. That was October 5th. Today is July 21st. Do you know I have not had one conversation with Sandra or the pastor on that Mama died, though I knew. When her memorial or funeral was, I've never heard. I stumbled out there on November 11th for Veterans Day and saw she'd been buried. I assumed it. You have no idea the destruction that you and Sandra have done to our family heritage. I don't know why. It's a gift. Because when I'm gone, there's no more lying. More to follow, but I wanted to give you a heads up to tell you that now I'm of a healthy nature, that either someone gets Sandra's attention or a couple lawyers that I've talked to who are licking their chops are going to take Sandra on. If you have any influence, do what you can to make sure that doesn't happen. Most importantly, Renee, in spite of how you supposedly feel about me, look at the pictures. When you broke your arm and they were going to take your arm off, Dad came up to me and sat down and said, keep an extra eye on your little sister for me, would you? So take a look at those pictures. Horseback, baby carriages, sink. Who's in the picture with you? Me. It was an honor that what Dad asked me to help my sister. Now I'm asking you to help me. Love you.